I'm Ricky from Moshville Times. I'm delighted to be welcomed by John Badger. He's a Manchester legend, drummer, promoter, all-round good guy. So it's good to finally meet you, John. So how are you keeping? You still working, etc., during the lockdown?
Yeah, I'm still working. Yes, I've been working at home now since lockdown, and I was just informed as of last week that I'll be working at home until January. So kind of used to it now. So I quite like working from home. It means I don't have to travel every day. So
yeah, what is it you do?
I work for RBS Bank.
All right, okay.
So I do lots of different products. I can't actually go into anything that I do.
I know,
Actually,
but that's you until January. So that's good.
that's my day-to-day job.
So basically, you're known in Manchester for a number of things then, but one of the things that you do is you're a very well-established promoter. So tell our readers about yourself and what made you decide to become a promoter.
Yeah, so I think it was back at the end of 2016. So I used to play in a metal band called Imminent.
Okay.
And I used to organise pretty much all the gigs, and pretty much in most of the bands I've been in, I've always been the one organising the gigs, getting the contacts. And so I did it was like 4 or 5 dates with Pavidus, and then we did with Godshaped Devil and Deified. So that's the 2 other bands as well. And I organised it all. And when we sort of finished it, we came back and all the bands said it was well organised. They loved it. There was no surprises. And they said, well, why have you ever thought about putting your own gigs on, rather than someone else doing it? So I kind of toyed with the idea for a couple of months. And I spoke to a couple of promoters that I knew. So one of them was Simon Yarwood from Uprising.
Yeah.
And there was Steve, who used to do Mammoth Fest as well.
Okay.
And then Jay McGuire, who used to do HRH metal stuff as well. So I spoke to those guys, just I wasn't really asking for their tricks or trades. It was kind of what advice would you give for someone starting up their own event or their own festival? And they gave me some really good advice, and I sort of collated that all together, and then spent a couple of months speaking to a few bands that might have been interested. And then I put a thing out on Facebook saying, if I was going to put an event on, would any bands be interested in playing? And of course, would anyone turn up? And of course, the response was really, really good. So I decided to take the plunge and go for it. So 2017 was my first Badgerfest. So, and it's kind of flourished from there, really.
And your phone's never stopped ringing since then?
No, yeah, I get messages all the time.
That's brilliant. So obviously, like you said, you're most renowned for Badgerfest. That's obviously based in Manchester as well as promoting gigs locally. So what types of bands do you look for before you decide to promote them? Is it just specifically rock and metal, or are you open to anything?
I am personally open to anything personally, but because of the music I've generally dealt with or played in, it's kind of been around metal, but lots of different subgenres of metal.
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of different. I listen to dance music. I listen to soundtrack stuff. Punk. All different types of things. So, but at first when I was starting out, I thought I'll stick to the metal stuff because it's what I know about, and I know the crowd around it.
Yeah.
And when I first started doing gigs at GC, so Danny, who was in Prognosis, he gave me an opportunity to put some gigs on at GC, and one of the things I said I'm going to bring a lot of different bands here because it seems to be quite a lot of the same bands that are playing, and end of the day, the punters are the most important people because without them coming to a gig, there's no gigs for bands to play. So, and what's important for them is to see different bands all the time. They don't want to see the same bands all the time. They want to see something new, something fresh, something exciting. And that's what I brought to GC, and I've kind of done the same thing with Badgerfest as well. So all my lineups so far, bar a couple of bands, have been different lineups each year. Yeah. So you can find some festivals will rely heavily on the same types of bands because they know that they'll pull.
Yeah.
So if they know that they pull, they don't necessarily have to do as much promotion.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
Whereas I'm kind of the other way around, where I'd rather spend the time promoting and putting new bands in front of a fresh crowd for a fresh crowd to see a new band. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Thanks very much for that great answer. But if I knew that you like dance music, I would have interviewed you. But never mind.
Yeah.
So, although Badgerfest is only in its 4th year, how much has it grown since its inception then?
Yeah, really, really well. I mean, as I said, it's essentially three years of we've done 3 Badgerfests so far. So, so the first Badgerfest was at Star and Garter in Manchester. So it's about 180 capacity venue, and we with bands as well. So I think we pretty much sold out on the first one.
Right.
And then many people were asking, even on the day, they were saying, like, this is amazing. Do you know what I mean? This is such a well-oiled machine, well-run event. Everything was run on time. Had a good crew. Would they want to see obviously a further Badgerfest in the future? Do you know what I mean? So many of them were saying yes. So then the next one was at the Rebellion Bar in Manchester.
Okay.
And what I decided to do there, because they had the space, and I've seen events done there before, I put 2 stages on. So once one band finishes, the band kicks off.
Yeah.
And people love that. They love that because it just means it was just music all day. Do you know what I mean? It's keeping them going. And that was a massive success on that basis. And then it came to year 3, and we changed venues. I went to the Bread Shed, and the reason why I went to the Bread Shed, it was a little bit bigger. There was more space, but also there was a pub next door as well. So it's based on the reaction and sort of feedback we got. Is even though people love Rebellion, there's nowhere else to go. If that in terms of like, there's nowhere for their ears to rest, or for food, that type of thing. So the Bread Shed's good because it's got the venue, and then right next door, all in the same building, but it's got a pub.
Yeah, right.
So people can sort of go off. So if there's if they've watched a couple of songs of a band they don't particularly like or whatever, or they decide I'm going to go and rest my ears, have a pint, then they can sort of like go in and out sort of thing. So
yeah,
in terms of venue, it's a perfect venue for it, and that's where we're holding this year's Badgerfest as well. Fingers crossed. So yeah, definitely it's grown. More and more bands want to play. Bigger bands are sort of checking it out.
yeah.
So, and like this year we've got bands like Raging Speedhorn and Zentrix. I wouldn't have dreamed of having bands like that, initially. So
yeah.
Just goes to show that obviously the hard work that you put into it and the promoting that you do into it as well.
Yeah.
And of course, what I'm about is building a brand, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like you're doing it. But how much pressure are you under on the day? I mean, the festival, for example, there's going to be like 20 odd bands there. So how much pressure are you under on the day?
Lots of pressure, yeah. It's not so much pressure if you've got a good team and they know what they're doing. I mean, we're quite fortunate that we use the same people each year, so they know what they're doing. They've got a stage crew. You've got then obviously the sound guys. Then you've got the guys on the door, the merchandise people. And I think what it's about is making sure that they're prepared for it and they know what's going on. So as long as they know what bands are on their stage, what their times, what time the band's going on, what equipment everyone's got. So what's really, really important is obviously making sure that they know everything before they even step in the building. So, and that's what I do. So I prepare everything before they go in. So there's no shocks. So it's not a case of you just turn up on the day and I'll tell you what's going on. I can't work like that because it needs to run on time. When you think of having, like, for example, like the Saturday's got 15 bands on, that needs to run on time, because if it doesn't, then we're going to run massively over, and it means then the headline, for example, people end up going home because they've got to catch transport and so on.
Yeah.
So it's really, really important that it runs on time. So yeah, there is a lot of pressure on that side of it, because you do want it to run on time. You don't want any mess ups. You want equipment to be running properly. So. But you have to be prepared for it as well in case something does go wrong as well. But fortunately, so far in the 3 years we've been doing it, we've not really come across any hiccups so far.
Excellent.
So fingers crossed.
Thanks very much. Yeah, thanks very much for that, John. So obviously the world has pretty much turned to shit recently. So what can you tell us about Badgerfest 2020? As things stand, is everything going ahead, or what can you tell us?
Well, I mean, as it stands at the moment, we are still pushing forward. I've still got a couple of more bands to announce on the lineup, so there's still 2 more bands to announce.
Okay.
I think it's going to be the second week of August, so 2 more bands there. So we are still pushing forward. At the moment, of course, we've not seen any indoor gigs go live as of yet, and they said from the 1st of August. So depending on when people listen to this, so from the 1st of August, small indoor gigs can go ahead at a very reduced capacity, and I think to start with, it's going to be seated. So we've really got to sort of keep watching out what's going on, because in order for Badgerfest to flourish and to run effectively, because at the end of the day, it's cost management as well.
Yeah.
So we do need the people buying tickets for it, because we can't start off on a negative, if that makes sense. So we don't want to be losing money.
Yeah.
And in order for it to be successful, we need best part of 300-400 people turning up.
Yeah.
And then when you think of the crew and the bands, that's another 100 people. So before over a course of a weekend, you're looking anything between 400 500 people in that venue at any one time.
Yeah.
So we kind of have to just watch out for what the government's saying, if it can go ahead or not, because as much as I'd still like to put a gig on at a reduced
Yeah.
capacity, I don't think it would give everyone the full experience.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are saying so far this is their their favorite lineup, or definitely the biggest lineup they've seen. And of course, the more times you do something, of course, you get better at it, and obviously more bands want to come on it, so you get more opportunities to get bigger bands. And as a result of it, this year, it's turned out to be a bit of a stonker. Not just from my opinion, of course, but from many others. And I want to be able to make sure that not only the bands get to play to a decent crowd, but of course the customers get to see it as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
I mean, I see you on social media a lot, and what's still pleasing to see is people are still buying the tickets. So
Do you know what they are as well? Yeah, people are still, and I think again, it's the communication. It's just about keeping people aware of it, what's going on with it, keeping updated. End of the day, I'm an independent person running an event all by myself. So, and I think if you're just honest with people and upfront about it, if it does come to it and we do have to postpone, I think most people would be quite happy to keep hold of the ticket.
Yeah.
And I've already spoken to all the bands so far, but I've asked all of them, and I think 95% of the bands said that if it does postpone, they are happy to come play next year.
Yeah.
And that's including both headliners as well. So that's really good news.
It says so myself, yeah.
So at the moment, we just have to kind of play that by ear. But yeah, I'm really, really grateful for people buying tickets still. I understand it's a trying time.
Yeah.
But people have been still buying tickets, so I definitely grateful.
Excellent, thank you. So obviously you cater for different genres of music. Then does that bring its own headaches when it comes to like promoting and marketing the festival?
Kind of one thing, yes and no. But because I listen to a lot of different music as well, I want to be able to offer people that variety.
Yeah.
Because I think the whole idea of when you think of an event compared to a festival, the whole idea of an event is we put on 3 or 4 bands that complement each other. So if it's a metalcore gig or a death metal gig, whatever, then of course you're going to cater the majority of the bands to that, to that night.
Yeah.
With a festival, you will have more opportunities to be able to cater more different subgenres, And one thing that people have said many, many times is that they like the variety. Now, obviously, when you look at the poster, it does look like it. It does definitely look like it's a metal festival. But if you actually listen to all them bands individually, you'll find there's lots of different styles.
Yeah.
And that's what people are really liking. And compared to last year, actually, some of the bands that came away, or the bands that were most impressed to people watching, actually weren't metal bands at all. So when you look at bands, there's a band called Blanket from Blackpool.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like a shoegazy post-rock band. Okay. And then there's a band called Five of the Hero Orphan, or Five of the Hero Orphan. And they're they class themselves as a doom jazz fusion band.
It's a lot
with saxophone. They're totally different.
Yeah.
And then the last one was a band called The Working Man. Now, The Working Man, unfortunately, not going anymore. But they play punk.
Yeah.
They play punk and they wear very strange outfits. And the singer gets changed and puts a new outfit on for every song.
Yeah.
Like the bass player dresses up like Donald Trump.
I think it gets attacked during gigs then, aye.
Yeah. But the amount of people that was kind of looking at it going, what am I actually watching? But when it finished, you're like, they're one of my favourite bands on the weekend, and they weren't even a metal band.
Yeah.
So if normal cases, if they saw bands like that, they probably wouldn't go to a gig.
Yeah.
But because they're at the festival, it's like, oh, I might as well check it out. And if I've watched 2 or 3 songs and I'm still liking it, I'll stay for the rest of it. If I don't, I can go to the pub. So it does open it up, and I think it's really good to showcase different types of bands for sure, definitely.
That's excellent. Thank you, John. So obviously you've been building your reputation, and you've also told us that you've got a full-time job as well. But how much of your personal life is taken up with promotion and marketing of the gigs then?
Pretty much every day. I'm always doing something every day. So whether it's speaking to bands, whether it's speaking to the venue, whether it's like putting posts out on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. One thing I do probably differently to most, if you were to look at a lot of independent festivals, if you look at their social feeds, a lot of the time they only talk about the festival.
Yeah.
If you were to look at the Badgerfest feed, it's not. A lot of there's lots of funny stuff on there, there's lots of random stuff, and what I like to do is just to create interaction.
Yeah.
So as much interaction as possible. You know what I mean? So, because I think if you talk about something too much of the same thing, people get bored.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the things I did when I was starting out with Improvidus. That's the one thing I said, because I don't feel if you look at all the bands around us, they only talk about themselves. And after a period of time, people switch off. If you start talking about other things and it's more interesting, it's something that they like, they'll follow it as well, just for that reason.
Yeah.
And if you give that support to the bands, if you're there promoting other gigs, which no one was doing at that time, so it was unheard of promoting someone else's band if it's not your own.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think as a result of that now, that's why the scene is becoming what it is, because everyone does now support each other and gets behind each other.
So it should.
It does take up a lot of time. When you think it's just me, actually, I'm the only person who runs Badgerfest at the moment.
Well, that actually leads on to my next question. Like, how many people do you have working with you, and can this bring its own pressures as well? But
so it's just me at the moment, and it's not because I don't like, what's the word? I don't know. I'm not gonna say I'm anal about it, but but at the moment, I think I've just got an idea of what I want to do with it, and until it gets to the point where we do need further people helping, then so be it. But at the moment, I can still do it all by myself. I think if it only gets bigger, if we decide to go bigger, whether we go to the bigger venues or whatever, then of course that's where other people will definitely be coming on board and utilizing people just to do social media stuff, or to get radio play and all that kind of stuff. So utilizing people's skills in other areas, so I can focus on things. Because at the end of the day, what I would like to be able to do is I'd like to go to Badgerfest and not even do anything.
Just enjoy.
I'd like to be able to enjoy it. I'd like to go around talking to people. Let's have a beer, have a bit of food. Do you know what I mean? Watch bands, and that's it. And have a team that all run it for us. Yeah. And the good thing about what I do with the team as well, they all get paid as well. So everyone gets paid, and that's a big thing for me. I want to make sure that everyone gets paid, even if it's just covering their costs of whether it's petrol and food. I think everyone who works or who spends a full shift working there, they deserve to get something. Yeah. And I think that's where sometimes a lot of events they don't recognise that, and that's what I want to recognise, because that's a big thing for me, especially coming from a musician as well. Yeah. So it's important to make sure that whoever puts in their time, they get paid on some level. So definitely, yeah. So when you think of like Badgerfest this year, and you think of the team, so you've got like sound engineers, stage managers, stage crew, artist liaisons, you've got the door managers, you've got merchandise managers, photographers, media, security. You think of all these people that are all working surrounding you, you know what I mean? And,
yeah. Well, I mean,
it's really good.
You gave us a brief history of Badgerfest, and it's certainly heading in that direction. It's just getting bigger and bigger each year. So who knows what can happen next year,
Fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed. Well, yeah, if it's the 5th anniversary, as long as this year goes ahead, of course. You know what I mean? So
exactly. So, if you were to give advice for someone expressing an interest in becoming a promoter, then what would it be?
I would certainly, and I've said this on many occasions, and even with a couple of guys that I know as well, is start with a love for music. Yeah. Start with a love. If it's purely on the grounds of trying to get it to make money, it's a very difficult game. Yeah. And it's about making sure that you do your research. It's about managing budgets. I've seen many promoters, unfortunately, they'll say they're going to pay a band 200 quid and 5 people turn up, and they've still got to pay that band. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it's managing your budget, managing your expectations. Can you dedicate the time to promote it? Yeah. So we're thinking I'm doing stuff every day. So for the average promoter, especially in the underground scene, should be spending 5 or 10 hours a week. Yeah. Doing promotions, and I think once your name's out there, because many times I've probably like yourself, when you think of a promotions company who put a gig on. Oh, you say, such and such that person's put that gig on. Oh, I'll probably go to that because I know it'll be good. Do you know what I mean? And I think so. It's the name above the door as well. So that's what's important. But I think one of the biggest things really is learn how to communicate. Now, I know that sounds like a stupid thing, but you'd be surprised of how many people don't communicate. And I've seen it from being as a musician myself, where it's kind of literally the day before where you're having to ask the promoter, right, what time do we need to load in? What time are we actually on stage? What equipment do we need to bring? That kind of stuff. And that's the sort of stuff that should be done weeks in advance, if not months, depending on the size of the event, you know what I mean? So, so like a Badgerfest now, it's, people will be getting told 2 months in advance. Yeah. Prior to so when they walk into that venue, They know exactly what's going on. They know what gear's there. They know what time they're on. They know what time to load in. What time they should be bringing their equipment in. Where they can park. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a little simple thing like that. So communication is the biggest thing. But overall, start with a love for music.
Yeah.
And that's definitely a good start.
That's excellent. Thanks, John. So what would you say is the proudest moment of your career so far? I've got a funny feeling you were going to say Badgerfest 2020, but
well, you'd say that, yeah. That's definitely up there. But in actual fact, there's two memories really. So, from a drumming side, from a drumming perspective, the first time I played Manchester Academy.
right.
So, I'd only been drumming for 2 years, and I played Manchester Academy. So, to me that was a big highlight because all my friends came down. My parents came down.
Who were you supporting?
So it was just they used to call it Academy Unsigned. So the promoter back then is a promoter. They used to just put gigs on an academy, and you just have to, at the time you had to sell the minimum 50 tickets back then just to play.
Yeah.
So back then what you used to do, because that was back in the MySpace days. So you'd either put it on MySpace, or you literally phone around your friends and go, "Don't come to this gig." Do you know what I mean? That's how you used to hold. That's how you used to sell your tickets.
How old are you, John? How old are you? MySpace.
37.
Oh, younger than me.
And then the second one it is to do with Badgerfest, and it's the first Badgerfest. And what I remember was standing at the back of the room, and I think it was about halfway through the day or something like that. I'm standing right at the back of the room, next to the sound engineer, and I'm just standing there watching everyone. Now I could just see everyone smiling. They were, pitting in the pits and all that kind of stuff. Having a good beer. See people laughing. And I think that was one of my proudest ones, because it's like I stood there and go, I created this. I did this.
Yeah.
So if I wouldn't have done this, then this wouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
So nothing to do with money. Nothing to do with nothing to do like that. It's purely just the ground. I just want people to have a good time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think if people have a good time, they're going to walk away and they remember it. And I think what our ethos is about creating memories, and that's what we're trying to do. So yeah.
That's an excellent way to put it, like creating memories. So what was the first gig that you put on?
Badgerfest.
There you go.
It's the easiest one, yeah.
Yeah.
First ever gig put on, yeah. So kind of mad really. So considering that's 10 bands one day, first gig, and getting bands like Chrysler on your first gig.
Yeah. So actually, yeah. So you've talked a lot about the good things, but you must have learned some lessons on the way as well, being a promoter.
Yeah, I suppose it's one thing I'd say is just not to jump straight in. Research your bands. Get an idea of the bands as well, making sure that you complement each lineup with obviously similar type bands as well. And I think it was always good to look at other events and see what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Sort of compare yourself, see what they're doing, what kind of bands are they putting on. How do they present themselves online? How do they promote? Are they only using one source of promotion? Are they just throwing out a Facebook profile, a Facebook event page, and that's it?
Yeah.
So try to engage as much as possible. So like Badgerfest, for example, we do a lot of old school stuff. So, we go out there with flyers.
Yeah.
It sounds like a thing of the past now, flyers.
Still an essential part. So is that some of the pressures that you're under every day as a promoter then, just marketing?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Getting the name out there?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, because we mainly do with a lot of underground unsigned bands, we're not dealing with bands like Skindred or, Napalm Death or, bands like that, they're big international levels. So because we're dealing with predominantly the underground scene, it involves a lot more effort and a lot more time. So if you're putting a big band on, all you have to do is put a link out and then say, right, the band's on, and people buy tickets.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
So when you get into a point where you say, I've got a weekend here, 28 bands, and it's going to cost you 30 quid. It's like, oh, 30 quid, right, okay. Is there any bands there I might want to see?
Yeah.
I mean, I seen one person said, oh, I'm there just to see Zentrix. And the amount of people that said underneath, I mean, there's 27 other bands you can check out as well, Do you know? So there's so many other bands that you can check out, and I guarantee that you'll walk away with a band that you've never heard of before who becomes one of your new favourites.
Yes.
So definitely, promoting underground small bands, up and coming bands is definitely a difficult task. In comparison to the bigger stuff. But we might get there one day as well with that.
Yeah.
So.
Cheers, John. So, what would you say your ambitions are in 2020 and beyond? Then, I mean, do you envisage owning your own venue for your gigs to promote in the future or anything like that?
Probably not necessarily my own venue, because that takes another pressure, and I think with especially with what's going on at the moment with COVID and stuff, owning a venue at this time at the moment, it seems like a bit of a nightmare, and I feel sorry for so many venues out there at the moment that are literally fighting, tooth and nail to get funding just to stay open.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'd want that kind of pressure myself and run an event. Do you know what I mean? Or running events. But my sort of vision really is to become the Manchester version of Damnation.
Nothing stopping you.
So, and that's doing stuff like Manchester Academy with the 3 venues inside the university. So, Academy 2, 3, and Academy 4. So that's potentially an opportunity, and that can cater for 2,000 people.
Wow.
So that's a goal.
Yeah.
When I was doing the fourth one, I didn't think I'd be where I am now, and we're almost at almost at 5 years in, and people going, "Wow, this Badgerfest been going that long now?" Oh, no, not long, but I mean, are we almost at 4 years? I mean, it doesn't seem like long ago we're doing the first one.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. So I think it's always good to have a goal or an aspiration to try and push forward for something rather than just staying at the same level. Don't get it wrong, there are some events that do want to stay at the same level. I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it isn't from them at all. They're quite happy to stay at level because they know they can run it. They run it effectively, budget wise, and it's not too much hassle. But if you do want to push it, I think it's always good to try and find something to push towards too.
So, you certainly seem to be aspiring to that. So you certainly seem to be putting the bits of the jigsaw together and heading in that direction. So kudos to you, sir. Kudos to you. But I have to ask, is there a band that you're desperate to sign and desperate to promote and get a gig for, but just got away from you?
So far, I mean, all the bands that, because I haven't really approached massive bands, if that makes sense. So, but I've kind of stuck to bands where I think I could have a conversation with, because the thing is, the bigger the bands, the more loopholes you have to go through.
Okay.
So when you think of band management, then they've got their own booking agent. Do you know what I mean? And it gets a little bit more difficult, and to go through that. But so far, the majority of the bands that I've asked have all come on board, which is kind of unusual, really. Do you know? So I mean, there was bands like I spoke to bands like Godflesh. Very, very good band, but too expensive, so you kind of have to weigh it up, really. Is it worth having a band like that on, because that's going to take them quite a lot of your budget up for one set.
Yeah. So
I think I'd rather have still good headliners, but affordable headliners.
Yeah.
But also have a ton of talent underneath it.
Yeah.
So I'd rather do that. That way, there's plenty of variation.
Yeah.
And offer the customers value for money. So, talking like a salesman here. So
you are. You sold me a ticket.
So yeah.
So we've got a couple of questions left, and we're going to talk about John Badger a wee bit then. So you're in a plethora of bands. Could you tell us the bands that you're actively involved in just now?
Yeah, so currently at the moment I'm in a band called Agira, or Agria, and they're a post-black metal band.
Okay.
So we play quite long songs. I don't really know how to describe the music, really. It's quite difficult because there's lots of different elements to it, but the easiest way to say it is post-black metal.
Right.
So there's quite a lot of blast beat in there, some fast drumming, so
that.
So we did there's an EP out as well that's come out earlier this year, and now we're going into the studio next January to record the next EP. So we're just currently working on music for that. I've got a brand new project as well, which I can't disclose any names at this time. But it's a brand new band. It's on the horizon.
Music then.
Oof. If you're to mixture, oh God, it's kind of, we've probably think now where I'm going with this, but it's kind of like there's bits of prog in there. If it's bits like Ghost,
Okay.
Enslaved. So it's kind of, if I was to put it down to, well, we described it as funeral rock.
Okay. You've invented a whole new genre of music.
Funeral rock or black and roll.
There you go. I like it.
So
I like it.
yeah, so that's the one. Of course, you interviewed Ward 16 not long ago. So yeah, I recorded their drums for their album.
Was that experience for you?
Really good, yeah. I just remember getting a phone call just before Christmas and off of David and Kerry, and basically saying that I think it was the drummer just disappeared, and I don't know where he's gone, and they were due to record their album in sort of early February, and they said that would I be interested in coming on board, because I think they knew, because I can learn quite quickly and I can put stuff together quite quickly as well, and because I played in a fair few bands in some different types of genres. That'd probably be a good fit and something that's quite quickly as well. I mean, I know they put the album back a month as well, which was good, because if we would have gone in there for early Feb, we would have only had like 5 weeks to work, which would have been, really, really tough. So I think we had about 8 or 9 weeks to put all the songs together, and they were really welcoming in terms of my ideas as well. Towards the songs as well. So I think some of the songs changed slightly with different elements, so brought a different sort of freshness or different life, different likeness to them. And then, have you heard the new one, Imago?
Yes, I have. I like it.
Yeah. So that's the first one. It's very, very different compared to their first album. We'll put it that way. It feels like I don't like to use the word grown up, but it's definitely more emotional.
Mature.
So yeah, mature. Yeah, not in an old way.
yeah.
Very, very, very good. And I think there's a guest vocalist on there which you'll get told about at some point as well.
Yeah.
So that's quite well. And I do some live session work as well with Scott Beveridge projects. So he used to kind of like in Metallica, Iron Maiden type stuff.
Okay.
The band called Agent 47 as well. I've done quite a lot of live work. And I did some live work earlier this year with a band called Prometheum as well. So chances I might be going back with them.
They're death metal, aren't they?
No, I would class them as groove metal.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
You also done the what was it, Drumming for Change? Is that right?
Yeah, so I did. So last November I did a Drum Up Change, which was drumming for 10 bands in one day.
How did you feel the following day?
Do you know what? I was absolutely fine.
Yeah.
I kept thinking I was going to wake up in the morning and all my joints were going to be stiff, or I'm not going to be able to walk, or I kept waiting for that third day or the second day in. I kept thinking maybe there's going to be a lapse and then I'm not going to be able to get out of bed or nothing. But I was absolutely fine. I managed to drive home that night straight afterwards. So and I'm doing Drum Up Change again next year in May. And instead of drumming with 10 bands, I'm doing it with 13 bands. So
you're a glutton for punishment, aren't you?
Yeah. And so when you see some of the bands I'm playing with, you'll understand why. Yeah.
So I've just got one last question then. So you've talked about a lot of bands and that you play drums for them. Would you like to play another instrument in the band if the opportunity arose? Can you play anything else?
I can't play anything else. I did have a dab at the bass once, years ago, but the bass is something I've always, I'd probably say over the last 12 months is something I would want to pick up. And the type of music I'd want to play actually is more post-punk.
Yeah.
In the style of like...
everything else apart from that.
Yeah, so because I've done metal and everything, so I thought, maybe something different. But I like simple bass lines. Yeah. Simple bass lines, stuff that gets people dancing. Like stuff like Public Image, Killing Joke, them sorts of bands. But one of my favourite bands at the moment is a band called Viagra Boys from the US. So if you do get a chance to check them out, they're really, really good. And again, they just get people dancing. So and that's what I'd like to be able to do based on that. So maybe pick up the bass at some point. So yeah.
Excellent, John. So obviously we're here to promote Badgerfest then. So if anybody wants to check out Badgerfest, where will they get all the social media then? What would they look for? Yeah,
so they can go on to literally onto Facebook, look for, just go on the Badgerfest page or Badgerfest 2020. So they can find all the info on there. Got an Instagram page as well and a Twitter page, so not too difficult to find. on there. So yeah, definitely.
That's excellent.
If they do want to find out more information, they can send us a message if they want. If they're a band, please, I've got no more spots.
You're still getting them.
I'm still getting them, yeah. Yeah, but I do respond to everyone and tell people nicely, you know. So I just say unfortunately it's full, you know.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
You know.
But keep your eye out for next year because you never know how big this is going to get. So.
Well, yeah, if it goes ahead this year, from September, applications will be open.
Yeah.
So I do a 2-month window, or 6 weeks, something like that. So from September to about mid-October, end of October, and then normally in November is when I do I literally spend that whole entire month shaping the lineup from that point. And then from about January, February, we'll start announcing it all. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, John. I think you've answered all my 101 questions, and thank you very much for your time. Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure meeting you finally. So I look forward to seeing you soon. Okay, you take care, John.
Yeah.